Commander Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of his ship and looked out at the endless stars. He had been fighting wars for 30 years. In that time, he had seen every kind of battle the galaxy could offer. His blue-gray skin showed the scars of a dozen conflicts, and his 4 arms moved with the careful precision of someone who had learned to stay alive when others did not. The Altarians were known across the galaxy as Master Warriors. They planned every move, calculated every risk, and never let emotions cloud their judgment. Hyun-woo was one of their best commanders. He had fought the crystal beings called Vextar, who swarmed like angry insects across star systems. He had battled the Keth, whose hive minds could coordinate 1,000,000 soldiers as if they were one creature. He had even survived encounters with the cybernetic Nolvok, who replaced their bodies with machines to become perfect killing devices. Each species fought differently. The Vextar used numbers and speed. The Keth used biological weapons that could turn a planet's own life against it. The Nolvok relied on technology so advanced it seemed like magic, but Hyun-woo had learned to counter them all. War was a science to him now, with rules and patterns that never changed. That was why he felt annoyed when the Galactic Council gave him his new assignment. They wanted him to evaluate something called humans for possible membership in their alliance. The report on his desk described a young species from a small world called Earth. They had only recently developed space travel, and their weapons were simple kinetic devices that threw metal projectiles. Their conflicts were limited to their home planet, which suggested they knew nothing about real warfare. Hyun-woo read through their military history with growing boredom. These humans had fought many wars, but they were all small affairs compared to galactic conflicts. They used primitive aircraft and ground vehicles. Their largest battles involved maybe a few million soldiers, while galactic wars could span entire star clusters with billions of combatants. The journey to the Sol system took 2 weeks. During that time, Hyun-woo studied everything the Council had gathered about humans. Their biology was unremarkable. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, typical carbon-based life. They were neither particularly strong nor fast. Their lifespans were short by galactic standards. They had no natural weapons, like claws or poison. What puzzled him was their emotional range. Most successful military species had evolved past strong emotions. The Altarians had learned to suppress anger and fear because these feelings led to poor decisions in battle. The Vextar felt only hunger for conquest. The Keth shared emotions through their hive mind, which dampened individual responses. But humans seemed to experience emotions with unusual intensity, which should have made them terrible soldiers. When Hyun-woo's ship entered Earth's solar system, he was surprised by what he found. The humans had built impressive space stations and their ships, while Primitive showed clever engineering. They greeted him with proper military courtesy and arranged a meeting with their leaders. General Da-un was a middle-aged human woman, with graying hair and sharp eyes. She wore a simple uniform without excessive decoration, which Hyun-woo respected. Admiral Tae-hyun accompanied her, a tall man with calloused hands that suggested he had worked his way up through the ranks. Both humans showed the kind of competence Hyun-woo expected from experienced officers. The meeting took place in a conference room aboard the human space station. Da-un presented their military capabilities with straightforward honesty. She did not exaggerate their strengths or hide their weaknesses. Their space navy was small but well-trained. Their ground forces were experienced from recent conflicts. Their technology was improving rapidly. We know we are not the strongest species in the galaxy, Daon said, but we learn quickly and we do not give up easily. Hyunwoo found this refreshing after dealing with species that boasted about their power. He asked to observe human military exercises and review their tactical doctrines. Everything he saw confirmed his initial assessment. The humans were competent, but unremarkable. They followed standard military principles, and their soldiers obeyed orders efficiently. Their weapons were indeed primitive. They still used chemical explosives and metal projectiles instead of energy weapons. Their armor was basic metal and ceramic instead of force fields. Their ships relied on simple engines rather than dimensional drives. By galactic standards, they were at least 1,000 years behind current military technology. Admiral Tai Hyun showed him recordings of human conflicts. Hyunwoo watched their forces advance across battlefields with reasonable coordination. They used cover effectively and supported each other well. Their casualties were higher than more advanced species would accept, but they accomplished their objectives. Your soldiers fight bravely, Hyunwoo told the admiral. They would make good support troops in a galactic conflict. Tae-hyun smiled in a way that seemed strange. Perhaps you would like to see us in a real situation? We have a small problem on one of our outer colonies that needs attention. Hyunwoo was curious. Real combat situations always revealed more than exercises. What kind of problem? A group called the Hegemony has taken control of New Busan Colony. They are holding civilians hostage and demanding ransom. We were planning to send a peacekeeping force to resolve the situation. This sounded like a simple police action rather than real warfare, but Hyunwoo agreed to observe. It would give him a complete picture of human military capabilities. He expected to see how they handled colonial security, which was important for any species joining the galactic community. As they prepared for departure, General Da-eun pulled him aside. Commander Hyunwoo, I want you to understand something about humans. We are not like other species you may have encountered. When we fight to protect something we care about, we become different. Hyunwoo nodded politely, but he did not take the warning seriously. Every species believed their military was special. The Vextar thought their swarm tactics were unbeatable. The Keth believed their biological weapons were unstoppable. The Nolvac were convinced their technology made them invincible. But in the end, war followed the same patterns everywhere. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The transport ship carrying Hyunwoo and the human peacekeeping force jumped out of hyperspace near New Busan Colony. Through the viewing port, Hyunwoo could see the small world spinning slowly below them. It looked peaceful from space, with blue oceans and green continents that reminded him of Earth. But his sensors detected the signs of conflict, damaged orbital platforms and debris from destroyed ships. Colonel Min-ho commanded the human force. He was a compact man with steady hands and alert eyes that missed nothing. His soldiers numbered only 200, which seemed impossibly small for retaking an entire colony. Most galactic peacekeeping operations required at least 10,000 troops supported by orbital bombardment and siege equipment. Colonel, do you not think your force is too small? Hyunwoo asked as they reviewed the mission briefing. Min-ho shrugged. The Hegemony has maybe 500 fighters holding the main settlement. We have good intelligence on their positions. And equipment. 200 should be enough. Hyunwoo studied the tactical display. The Hegemony had seized the colony's capital city and fortified key positions. They held the spaceport, the government center, and the main power plant. Worse, they had gathered over 1,000 civilians in the central square as human shields. By galactic military standards, This situation required careful negotiation, followed by a months-long siege to minimize civilian casualties. The human soldiers prepared for deployment with efficient movements. Hyun-woo observed them closely, noting their equipment and behavior. Their weapons were the same kinetic rifles he had seen in exercises. Their armor was lightweight metal plates that would not stop serious military weapons. Each soldier carried enough supplies for only 3 days, suggesting they expected a very short operation. What interested him more was their emotional state. His sensors could read biological markers for stress, fear, anger, and other feelings. The humans showed normal pre-combat stress levels, but also something else, a kind of focused determination that he had not seen in other species. They were not just preparing for a mission, they were preparing for something personal. Lieutenant Soo Jin caught his attention particularly. She was the unit's medic, responsible for treating wounded soldiers and civilians. She checked her medical supplies with gentle hands, speaking quietly to her patients from previous missions who were recovering in the ship's medical bay. Her touch was soft, and her voice was kind. But when she checked her rifle, her movements became different, more precise, more purposeful. "The hegemony are not soldiers," she explained to Hyun-woo when he asked about the enemy. "They are criminals who prey on civilian settlements. They take what they want and kill anyone who resists." "How do you know this?" "Because they hit my home colony 2 years ago. My younger brother was visiting the market when they attacked. He was only 16. Hyun-woo did not ask what happened to her brother. The way Soo Jin's biometric readings spiked when she mentioned him told the story clearly enough. The human force deployed to the planet's surface using simple drop pods. Hyun-woo rode with Colonel Min-ho's command unit, watching through his tactical display as the soldiers spread out across the landing zone. Their initial movements followed standard military doctrine: establish a perimeter, gather intelligence, identify targets. Nothing unusual for a competent force. The first engagement came when a hegemony patrol discovered their landing site. Hyun-woo watched the firefight through his sensors, comparing it to similar actions he had observed from other species. The humans used cover effectively and coordinated their fire well. Their weapons were loud and crude compared to energy rifles, but they seemed effective enough against unarmored targets. The hegemony patrol was eliminated quickly with minimal human casualties. One soldier took a minor wound to his shoulder but continued fighting without complaint. Their advance toward the city continued on schedule. "Your soldiers perform adequately," Hyun-woo told Colonel Min-ho as they moved through the forest toward the settlement. "They would benefit from better equipment and armor, but their training is solid." Min-ho nodded. "We make do with what we have. Human engineering may be simple, but it works." As they approached the city outskirts, Hyun-woo began to see signs of the hegemony's occupation: burned buildings, abandoned vehicles, bodies left unburied in the streets. His tactical computer cataloged the destruction methodically, but he noticed that the humans reacted differently. Their biometric readings showed increasing stress and anger as they saw evidence of civilian casualties. Corporal Jae-min stopped beside a destroyed school. Children's toys lay scattered in the dirt, covered with debris from the collapsed roof. Jae-min picked up a small stuffed animal and held it for a moment before carefully placing it back down. When he stood up, his face had changed. The friendly young soldier who had joked with his squad mates during the journey was gone, replaced by someone harder. "They attacked a school," Jae-min said quietly to his squad leader. "I see it," Sergeant Young-hee replied. Her voice was steady, but Hyun-woo's sensors detected the same changes in her that he had seen in the others. Keep moving. We'll settle this soon. The human force reached their observation positions overlooking the city center as the sun began to set. Through his enhanced vision, Hyun-woo could see the hegemony fortifications clearly. They had turned the government building into a fortress with armed positions covering all approaches. The civilians were visible in the square below, huddled together under guard. Colonel Minho studied the scene through his binoculars. Standard siege layout. They expect us to try negotiating for the hostages while they dig in deeper. Probably, hoping for reinforcements. Hyun-woo agreed with this assessment. Most military forces would attempt to establish communication with the enemy first, then spend days planning an assault that minimized civilian casualties. The cautious approach was always best when hostages were involved. That was when the hegemony leader made his announcement. The transmission came through on all communication channels, audio and video of a man in stolen military gear standing in the city square. Behind him, hegemony fighters forced a group of civilians to their knees. The man spoke in calm, measured tones about his demands and the consequences of resistance. Then he drew his sidearm and shot 3 of the hostages in the head. Hyun-woo watched his tactical display as every human soldier's biometric readings spiked simultaneously. Heart rates doubled. Stress hormones flooded their systems. But instead of the panic or paralysis these readings usually indicated, the humans became more focused. Colonel Minho's voice came over the communication system, and Hyun-woo was surprised by how calm it sounded despite the biological markers showing extreme stress. All units, we have new orders. We are going to end this situation now. Sir, what about negotiations? Asked one of the squad leaders. There will be no negotiations with people who execute civilians for show. We go in fast and we finish this. Completely. Hyun-woo had observed many military operations, but he had never seen anything like what happened next. The humans did not abandon their tactical discipline, but something fundamental changed about how they moved and thought. They began to plan their assault with a speed and efficiency that seemed impossible for their level of technology. More disturbing, they were not just planning to defeat the hegemony force. They were planning to make sure the hegemony would never threaten civilians again. As night fell over New Busan, Hyun-woo realized that General Da-eun's warning had not been empty words. He was about to see what humans became when they fought to protect something they cared about. The attack began at midnight. Hyun-woo watched through his tactical display as the human soldiers moved through the darkness toward the city. What he saw challenged everything he thought he understood about warfare. The humans had not abandoned their military training, but they had transformed it into something else entirely. Their careful advance became a flowing movement that seemed to bend around obstacles without slowing down. Their coordination improved beyond what their primitive communication equipment should have allowed. Most unsettling, their biometric readings showed they were still experiencing intense emotional stress, but instead of making them less effective, it was making them better soldiers. Corporal Jae-min led the first squad through the outer defenses. Hyun-woo had observed him during the journey as a typical young soldier, competent but unremarkable. Now Jae-min moved through the enemy positions like a force of nature. He did not just neutralize the hegemony guards. He eliminated them with a thoroughness that made Hyun-woo's tactical computer struggle to classify his actions. The hegemony had placed motion sensors and tripwires around their perimeter. Standard military doctrine would require careful disabling of each device, adding hours to the operation. Jae-min's squad found a different solution. They moved with such precise timing and positioning that they avoided triggering the sensors while simultaneously attacking from angles the enemy had not anticipated. When a hegemony fighter managed To raise an alarm, Jamin's response was immediate and final. He did not simply shoot the enemy soldier. He made sure that particular position would never threaten anyone again. The efficiency was terrifying. Sergeant Young Hee's team had the most difficult assignment, securing the power plant while avoiding damage to critical systems. The building was heavily defended and booby-trapped. Any mistake could leave the entire colony without power for months. Hyun-woo expected this to be the most cautious part of the operation. Instead, Young Hee's soldiers moved through the facility like they had been born knowing its layout. They disabled guards, disarmed explosives, and secured control systems with speed that seemed impossible. When one of her team members, Private Ji-woo, took a bullet to the leg from a hidden sniper, Young Hee's reaction was swift and terrible. She did not just suppress the sniper position. She eliminated it so completely that no one would ever use that vantage point again. Then she personally carried Ji-woo to safety while her other soldiers continued the mission without missing a beat. The whole sequence took less than 3 minutes. What disturbed Hyun-woo most was that the humans remained perfectly coordinated throughout their assault. This was not berserker rage that made soldiers effective, but unpredictable. This was focused, intelligent fury that enhanced every aspect of their performance. They anticipated each other's movements, provided support without being asked, and adapted to changing situations faster than Hyun-woo's tactical computer could track. The main assault on the government building should have been the most dangerous part of the operation. The hegemony had concentrated their best fighters there, along with automatic weapons and explosives. They held the high ground and had clear fields of fire in all directions. Most military forces would require heavy weapons and air support to take such a position. The humans used a different approach. They did not attack the building directly. Instead, they flowed around it like water, cutting off escape routes and eliminating supporting positions. By the time the hegemony realized what was happening, they were surrounded and isolated. Lieutenant Soo-jin led the medical team, but she was not just treating wounded soldiers. She had positioned herself to provide covering fire for the assault teams while simultaneously treating any injured civilians they encountered. Hyun-woo watched her shift between gentle healer and deadly marksman with fluid ease that should have been impossible. When a group of hegemony fighters tried to use civilian hostages as shields, Soo-jin's response was precise and unforgiving. She eliminated the threats without harming a single innocent person, then immediately began treating the traumatized civilians. Her hands were steady as she worked, but Hyun-woo's sensors detected the same focused fury in her that he saw in the combat soldiers. The final confrontation came when Colonel Min-ho's team reached the square where the remaining hostages were held. The hegemony leader had gathered his last dozen fighters around the civilians, threatening to kill them all if the humans did not withdraw. It was the classic hostage situation that required careful negotiation and patience. Colonel Min-ho did not negotiate. Instead, he spoke directly to the civilians in a voice that carried across the square. "Close your eyes and lie flat. We are going to get you out of here." Then the humans did something that made Hyun-woo question his understanding of what was possible in combat. In perfect coordination, without any visible signal, every human soldier in position around the square fired simultaneously. 12 shots, 12 targets, 12 hegemony fighters eliminated in less than 2 seconds. The precision was inhuman. The timing was impossible. The coordination required technology that the humans did not possess. Yet Hyun-woo had watched it happen with his own sensors. The hegemony leader survived only because he had been standing directly behind a civilian. He dropped his weapon and raised his hands, shouting surrender. Hyun-woo expected the humans to take him prisoner according to standard military protocol. Colonel Min-ho walked across the square and looked down at the man who had executed innocent people for show. For a moment, Hyunwoo thought the human officer might kill the prisoner in cold blood. The biological reading suggested Minho was capable of anything in his current emotional state. Instead, Minho spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the square. "You are going to spend the rest of your life in prison. But before that, you are going to help us find every other hegemony cell in this sector. Because if civilians die because we missed one of your bases, I will find you in whatever hole they put you in." The hegemony leader looked into Minho's eyes and immediately began talking. As the humans secured the area and began treating wounded civilians, Hyunwoo tried to process what he had witnessed. The entire operation had taken 6 hours from landing to completion. His projections had suggested it would require 3 days with significant casualties on both sides. The humans had not just defeated the hegemony force, they had eliminated it so completely that no remnant could threaten the colony again. They had rescued every surviving civilian without losing a single soldier. They had accomplished objectives that should have been impossible with their level of technology and numbers. Most disturbing of all, they had done it while experiencing emotional states that should have made them irrational and ineffective. Instead, their fury had made them more capable than any soldiers Hyunwoo had encountered in 30 years of warfare. As dawn broke over New Busan, Hyunwoo realized he needed to completely revise his understanding of what humans were capable of. War might not be new to the galaxy, but the humans had revealed something about it that no other species had ever shown him. They had revealed that love for what you protect could transform ordinary soldiers into something that made war itself afraid. The transformation that followed the battle disturbed Hyunwoo more than the fighting itself. Within minutes of the last shot being fired, the humans changed again. The focused fury that had made them unstoppable warriors simply vanished, replaced by the gentle, considerate beings he had first met. Lieutenant Soo-jin knelt beside a wounded hegemony fighter, carefully cleaning a bullet wound in the man's shoulder. Her hands were steady and gentle as she worked, speaking softly to calm his fear. This was the same person who had eliminated 3 enemy positions with surgical precision less than an hour earlier. Now she treated her former enemies with the same care she gave to injured civilians. "Why do you help him?" Hyunwoo asked. "This man was trying to kill you." Soo-jin looked up from her work. "The fighting is over. He is wounded and in pain. That is all that matters now." Hyunwoo watched. Corporal Jae-min helping evacuate elderly civilians from damaged buildings. The young soldier who had moved through enemy defenses like death incarnate was now carefully supporting a frightened old woman, speaking to her in reassuring tones. His touch was gentle, and his smile was warm. There was no trace of the terrifying efficiency he had displayed during the assault. The speed of this transition defied everything Hyunwoo knew about military psychology. In his experience, soldiers who fought with such intensity required days or weeks to return to normal behavior. Many never fully recovered from the mental strain of extreme combat. The humans switched between states as easily as changing clothes. During the mission debrief, Colonel Minho seemed genuinely concerned about Hyunwoo's opinion of the operation. "I apologize if our methods appeared unprofessional," he said. "We had to move quickly to prevent more civilian casualties." Hyunwoo stared at the human officer. "Unprofessional? Colonel, your force just accomplished something that should have been impossible." Minho looked puzzled. "We had good intelligence, and the enemy was overconfident. Any competent military unit could have achieved the same results." This casual dismissal of what Hyunwoo had witnessed was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the entire experience. The humans did not seem to understand how extraordinary their performance had been. To them, it was simply what soldiers did when protecting innocent people. Sergeant Young-hee submitted her after-action report with the same matter-of-fact tone she might use to describe a training exercise. She mentioned eliminating enemy positions and securing objectives, but made no reference to the supernatural coordination and efficiency her team had displayed. When Hyun-woo asked about her squad's performance, she shrugged. "We did what needed to be done. Ji-woo will be fine. The medics say he will be back on duty in 2 weeks." Hyun-woo reviewed the tactical recordings multiple times, analyzing every aspect of the human assault. The more he studied their movements, the more impossible they seemed. Individual soldiers had anticipated enemy actions that should have been unpredictable. Squads had coordinated maneuvers without visible communication. The entire force had operated with precision that required technology they did not possess. Yet his sensors confirmed that everything had happened exactly as recorded. The humans had achieved perfect tactical coordination through nothing more than shared determination to protect innocent people. 3 days later, as the human force prepared to depart New Busan, Hyun-woo met with the colony's civilian leaders. Mayor Kyung-soo was an elderly man who had survived the hegemony occupation by hiding in the underground maintenance tunnels. His hands still shook when he spoke about what he had witnessed. "The hegemony promised to return," he told Hyun-woo. "They said even if we drove them off, they would come back with more ships and weapons. They would make us pay for resisting. And now?" Kyung-soo's expression changed. "After seeing what the human soldiers did, I do not think the hegemony will ever come near this system again. Word travels fast among criminals. No one wants to face humans who are fighting to protect someone." This observation troubled Hyun-woo deeply. The implications went far beyond a single military operation. If the humans could project this kind of psychological deterrent through one small engagement, what would happen when other hostile species learned about their capabilities? He interviewed several of the rescued civilians, trying to understand their perspective on the human rescue. Their accounts were consistent and disturbing. The hegemony fighters, who had shown no fear when terrorizing unarmed colonists, had become increasingly desperate and panicked as the human assault progressed. "They knew they were going to lose before the fighting even started," said Dr. Yoon Kyung, the colony's chief medical officer. "Something about the way the humans moved, the way they communicated. The hegemony could feel that they were facing something beyond their ability to handle." When Hyun-woo returned to his ship, he found a message waiting from Admiral Solmi, his commanding officer. The Galactic Council was requesting a preliminary assessment of human military capabilities. They wanted to know if humanity was ready for membership in the Galactic Alliance. Hyun-woo stared at the message for a long time. How could he explain what he had witnessed? How could he describe a species that could channel protective fury into tactical perfection? How could he convey that the humans were not just another military force, but something entirely new in galactic warfare? He began drafting his report, then stopped and deleted everything he had written. The words seemed inadequate to capture what he had experienced. Standard military terminology had no classification for what the humans represented. Instead, he decided to request additional observation time. The Council needed to see this for themselves before making any decisions about humanity's role in galactic affairs. 3 months later, his opportunity came. The Vextar, fresh from conquering 3 systems in the Outer Rim, launched a surprise assault on the human colony of New Seoul. The attack was typical Vextar strategy: overwhelming numbers, coordinated swarm tactics, and complete disregard for civilian casualties. Hyun-woo volunteered to observe the human response, bringing Admiral Solmi and several other senior Altarian officers with him. This time, he would have witnesses to verify what he had seen at New Busan. The Vextar expected to face the same humans that Hyun-woo had initially evaluated, competent but unremarkable soldiers with primitive technology. Instead, they encountered the humans that emerged when something they protected was threatened. Admiral Solmi watched in growing amazement as the human relief force, led by Captain Insu, deployed against the Vextar swarm. The aliens had achieved orbital superiority and landed hundreds of thousands of warriors on the planet's surface. By any rational calculation, the human force was hopelessly outnumbered. But the humans did not fight rationally. They fought with the same focused fury that Hyun-woo had witnessed before, multiplied by the scale of the threat they faced. Commander Hae-won coordinated fleet movements that turned the Vextar's numerical advantage into a liability. When the aliens targeted civilian evacuation ships, the human response was swift and absolute. The battle for New Seoul lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Vextar swarm had been not just defeated, but annihilated. No survivors escaped, too. Report back to their hive queens. The human fleet pursued the fleeing remnants across 2 star systems, systematically eliminating every Vextar military asset they encountered. Admiral Solmi sat in stunned silence as she watched the human ships finally disengage and return to New Seoul. The same crews that had just demonstrated the capacity for systematic destruction were now working tirelessly to rescue trapped civilians and repair damaged infrastructure. "Commander Hyun-woo," she said quietly, "I believe we need to reconsider our classification system. The humans are not a minor species suitable for support roles." "What would you classify them as, Admiral?" Solmi watched the human fleet forming protective formations around civilian rescue ships. "I am not certain we have words for what they are. Perhaps we should simply call them human and let that speak for itself." Hyun-woo nodded and began composing his final report. The galaxy thought it understood warfare, but the humans had revealed something new. They had shown that war could be more than technology and tactics. It could be an expression of love for what you choose to protect, and that love could make even the most peaceful species into something that made their enemies afraid to sleep. 6 months after the Battle of New Seoul, Hyun-woo stood before the full assembly of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species filled the great chamber, their various forms creating a symphony of colors and shapes under the artificial stars. He had been preparing for this moment since his first encounter with humans, but he still felt uncertain about how to convey what he had learned. The council chamber fell silent as he activated his presentation display. Images from New Busan and New Seoul filled the holographic projectors, showing the devastating efficiency of human military operations. Murmurs rippled through the assembly as the representatives saw footage of human soldiers moving through enemy positions with supernatural coordination. "Honored delegates," Hyun-woo began, "I have spent the last year studying the species known as humans. My initial assessment was that they represented a minor military power suitable only for support roles in galactic conflicts. I was completely wrong." Chancellor Veltar of the Keth hive mind leaned forward with interest. The crystalline being's multifaceted eyes reflected the battle footage as it played. "Their technology appears primitive by galactic standards. How can they pose a significant military threat?" Hyun-woo paused the display on an image of Lieutenant Soo-jin treating wounded enemy prisoners after the Battle of New Busan. "The humans do not rely primarily on technology, Chancellor. They have weaponized something that we have long considered a weakness in military affairs. Which is? Asked General Mordak of the Cybernetic Nolvok Coalition. Love. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Several delegates activated their translation systems, certain they had misheard. Admiral Solmi, sitting in the Altarian section, nodded gravely. She had seen the evidence herself and still struggled to believe it. Hyun-woo continued his presentation, showing tactical analyses of human combat performance. When humans fight to protect something they care about, they undergo a psychological transformation that enhances every aspect of their military capability. Their coordination improves beyond what their communication technology should allow. Their tactical thinking becomes more creative and adaptive. Most importantly, they develop a determination that makes them willing to accept any cost to achieve victory. He showed footage from New Seoul, where human pilots had rammed their ships into Vextar swarm vessels to protect civilian evacuation transports. The pilots had ejected at the last moment and survived, but their willingness to make such sacrifices had broken the enemy's morale completely. The Vexitar are known for their fearlessness in battle, noted Ambassador Zephyrin of the Diplomatic Corps. They have conquered dozens of systems through sheer aggressive determination, what made them retreat from human space. Hyun-woo displayed casualty reports from the engagement. In 18 standard hours, the humans eliminated an entire Vextar invasion force of 300,000 warriors. But more significantly, they pursued the survivors across multiple star systems, ensuring that no Vextar military assets remained in human space. The message was clear. Any species that threatens human civilians will face total destruction of their military capability. The presentation continued with intercepted communications from various hostile groups across the galaxy. Since word of human military prowess had spread, pirate attacks on civilian shipping had decreased by 70% in sectors near human space. Criminal organizations were actively avoiding any territory where humans might respond to calls for help. They have created a deterrent effect without deploying large military forces, Hyun-woo explained. Other species fear not just human weapons, but human determination when protecting innocent people. Senator Krell of the Peaceful Harmony Coalition raised a concern. This sounds like the humans are inherently violent. How can we trust them as allies if they are capable of such brutality? Hyun-woo had anticipated this question. He displayed footage of human soldiers helping rebuild New Busan after the battle, working alongside former enemies to restore damaged infrastructure. The humans are not violent by nature. They are protective. There is a crucial difference. He showed recordings of human medical teams treating wounded from all species after the various conflicts he had observed. They show mercy to defeated enemies and compassion for all civilians, but they will not tolerate threats to innocent people. Their military doctrine is defensive rather than expansionist. The presentation concluded with strategic assessments from military leaders across the galaxy. Species that had fought alongside humans reported unprecedented coordination and effectiveness. More importantly, species that had fought against humans uniformly recommended avoiding any future conflicts with them. The humans represent something new in galactic warfare, Hyun-woo concluded. They have shown that emotional investment in protecting others can enhance military performance rather than diminish it. They fight not for conquest or resources, but for the safety of those they care about. This makes them simultaneously the most dangerous enemies and the most reliable allies the galaxy has ever seen. The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. Military advisors from various species studied the combat footage and confirmed Hyun-woo's assessments. Diplomatic experts analyzed human behavior patterns and concluded that their protective instincts made them naturally suited for peacekeeping operations. The final vote was unanimous. Humanity would be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with an unprecedented role in the new Mutual Defense Pact. Other species began requesting human military advisors not for their technology, but for their unique approach to warfare. Admiral Solmi approached Hyunwoo after the voting concluded. "You have changed how we think about military psychology," she said. "The humans have taught us that caring deeply about something can make soldiers more effective, not less." Hyunwoo nodded, watching as human delegates met with representatives from dozens of species. General Da-eun and Admiral Tae-hyun were already discussing joint training programs and defensive strategies. The humans seemed genuinely pleased to be working with others to protect civilian populations across the galaxy. "I think the humans will transform galactic military doctrine," he replied. "They have shown us that the strongest warriors are not those who feel nothing, but those who fight for something they love." 6 months later, Hyunwoo received his new assignment. He would serve as liaison officer aboard the human flagship Determination, helping coordinate joint operations between human forces and other galactic militaries. The ship's name seemed appropriate for a species that had weaponized their protective instincts. As his transport approached the human vessel, Hyunwoo reflected on how much his understanding of warfare had changed. He had spent 30 years believing that military effectiveness came from superior technology, tactical training, and emotional control. The humans had taught him that the most powerful weapon in any conflict was the willingness to sacrifice everything for the people you were fighting, to protect. Captain Insu welcomed him aboard the Determination with characteristic human warmth. The crew was preparing for their first major joint operation, a rescue mission to free civilian prisoners held by a criminal cartel in the Outer Rim. 7 different species would be working together under human coordination. "Are you ready to see how we do things?" Insu asked as they reviewed the mission plans. Hyunwoo smiled, something he had learned to do during his time with humans. "I think I am beginning to understand. War was indeed nothing new to the galaxy, but you have shown us that rage, when properly focused, can make war itself afraid." Insu nodded seriously. "We prefer to call it protective determination. But yes, when someone threatens innocent people, they discover that humans can become very focused on solving that problem permanently." As the Determination joined the joint task force heading for the Outer Rim, Hyunwoo realized that the galaxy was about to learn what humans meant when they said they would protect those who could not protect themselves. The criminal cartel had no idea what was coming for them, but they were about to discover that some species considered the safety of innocent people worth any price. War might not have been new to the galaxy, but humans had revealed something about it that would change military thinking forever. They had shown that love could be the most devastating weapon of all, and that those who fought to protect others were capable of things that made their enemies wish they had chosen different careers. The age of human influence in galactic affairs had begun, and the universe would never be quite the same.